Right, good morning. So we have been discussing the last unit of grade 10, right? So which is database management system. So I explained about the fundamentals of database management system. Especially we discussed about the term database first, and also we took the types of databases. We have manual database, we have electronic databases, and also we have taken the differences between these two. And after that, we have discussed about tables, right? Because table is one of the major component or major objects in database management system. So we took a typical table and introduced the components. We know about fields, we know about records, and we know the relationship between records, fields, and everything, right? So thereafter, maybe at the latter part of the last class, we have taken the most important part in database, which is keys, right? So I started to explain about keys. Right, so just a quick recall. So you know keys are nothing, they are fields in table, but not all the fields are considered as keys. Some fields which may have some unique characters or some special features can be taken as keys, right? There are a number of keys in databases, but for you as a student who learns grade 10 or 11, should know only 3 keys, right? So these are the 3 keys: primary key, right? Foreign key, and also composite key. Okay, so primary key, foreign key, and composite key. Sometimes it can be called composite primary key. So these are fields. There is no doubt at all. These are fields, but we should know the quality of the special feature that these fields have, right? So we have to discuss. Okay, let's take them one by one. Right, so starting from primary key, that may be the important thing. So better start from primary key. Right, so since it's a revision, right, this is not the typical class, right? So it is a revision, so we have to accelerate. So since it's a revision, I try to, focus on the main concept, right? Without further introduction or without the backgrounds, I just want to take the definition quickly. So primary key is a field used to identify each record in a table. I repeat it. So primary key is one of the fields which can be used for identifying the records in a table, right? Because, you know, in a table, there may be thousands of records, right? Sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands. So there is a need for identifying each record. So for identifying each record, we need a field. Definitely, right? We need a field there. So that field can be called primary key. Okay, it would be better if I take one example, then all you can understand, right? Even though it's a revision, let me take one example to clarify or to give some additional meaning, right? So let's take a simple table which has students detail, because you know that is one of the table which is too close to us, right? A table with students data. Let me put up a small table. So there is a table for student. So you have some fields there, admission number there, and your names are there, right? Your date of birth, right? And also the gender, right? These are enough for explaining the concept, right? So let me add some records. So there is a student with 1001, right? And let's name it Kamal. There is a date of birth. There is another student is women. So we have another one, Meena. Right, enough. So we have 3 records in this table. Listen to me carefully, right? So how did I define the term primary key? It's the field used for identifying each record in a table, right? Look here. So here we have records. This table may have hundreds of records, but I have taken only 3 for demonstration, right? So I have 3 records. Now I want to identify each record, right? It's a time for identifying every record one by one. Look here, for identifying each record, I cannot use name, right? I can't use the name because if I use the name, right, sometimes there is a possibility for having duplication names. See, if you take these 3 records, names are not duplicated, right? It seems to be unique. So unique means it cannot be duplicated. But you can't say that the names are unique because there may be hundreds of names, as I mentioned earlier. I have taken 3 of them. So Kamal may be somewhere there. Meena may be there because there are so many students whose name is Meena, right? Even women there. So what I'm trying to say is the names cannot be used for identifying the person, right? So I take that practical example again. So this is the same example which I took to explain during the class, right? So see, assume I have 100 students in front of me, right? So you are sitting in front of me. Now I want to identify a particular student, right? For taking attendance or some purposes, I want to identify a person, one student. So look here, if I used to call, or if I call that particular student name, what happens? I cannot identify because there may be 2 students who can have same name, but I wanted to take the particular student attendance. I used to call that, right? I called that particular person name, but unexpectedly 3 students stood up. So in this instance, I was unable to identify that particular person, right? So it simply means names cannot be used for identifying every student. Come back here. Every record is a student, don't forget, right? Every record is a student. In the practical example, I wanted to identify a student, therefore I used the name, but I ended up with disappointment, right? But here, again, same thing, I wanted to identify every record, which means every student. So here also I wanted to use the name, but the reason is same, right? Have you understood the real world example and this one looks same? So, names cannot be used for identifying the student, which means record. So it cannot be a primary key. Take a look at the date of birth. Can you identify every record using date of birth? You can't. Take a look at my example. So I just mentioned someone's date of birth for, taking the attendance, right? So now when I call that date of birth, or when I use the date of birth, I could see that 2 or 3 students standing up because all these people were born on the same date or same month, same year. They have the same date of birth. So again, I cannot identify that particular person using that date of birth because there are 3 students standing up, right? So here also, you cannot identify every record by using date of birth because there is a possibility for duplication. But here it seems to be unique, right? But again and again, I tell you, having the unique here doesn't mean the entire data becomes unique or entire data unique. You have only 3 data here, right? So take a look at the gender, it's never, right? So you have males, females, there is no, you can't, right? You cannot identify. So for identifying a person who are sitting in front of me, right? So I want to identify a person in this class. So for identification, I cannot use your name. I cannot use your date of birth. I cannot use your age. I cannot use your address because, there are some people, maybe 1, 2 people can come from one address. That is possible. So all I want is something which is unique for you. It cannot be given to any other people. That must be very, very special. That is the one which is called unique. So if you have admission number, yes, I can use the admission number because the admission number given by a school or given by an institution cannot be repeated. Right? So within that particular school, you have that particular unique number. So if I mention that admission number for identification, definitely I can find that person whom I wanted. Or if you hold an NIC, right? So you may have NIC, right? So there is a number. That number should be a special number, which is unique. That number must not be given to other people, right? So I can use NIC number too for identification. So NIC number or admission number, they may have the eligibility for become as primary key. So in this instance, yes, I can use admission number for identifying each person. See, look at that. This person can be identified by using 1001. If I pronounce 1001, I know that there is only one student who will stand up. If I use 1002, again, there should be one student. 1003, because these admission numbers never be repeated. So it's simple. Primary key is for identifying every record in a table. Don't forget, right? So to identify every record in a table, you must use a primary key, right? So here, names or date of birth or gender cannot be primary keys. Admission number can be, right? Okay. So now I define the term primary key and also I explain that with the help of an example, right? Look, so you have some idea now. I can't say that you have the complete, knowledge, but let me explain further, right? You need some more, things in order to get a clear understanding, right? Look here. If you want to set a field as a primary key, you need to focus on 2 things. Or in other words, primary key field should have or should fulfill 2 important features, right? So the fields who can satisfy those 2 features can become as primary key, right? So I tell you those 2 things. The first one is here, I already explained. What is it? See, in this example, you didn't select names as primary key. Also, you didn't select date of birth or gender. What's the reason? Ask yourself, why didn't you select these 3 fields? You avoided such fields and you selected only admission number. So ask yourself why did we select only admission number? There is an answer. What is it? A primary key field must be unique, right? A primary key field must be unique, which means that field cannot have duplicate data. So if it is duplicated, it cannot become as primary key. It's simple because if it is duplicated, it is impossible for identifying a person. See, names are duplicated. There are so many Kamals, there are so many Meenas, right? So names are duplicated, so names cannot be used for primary key, right? So that is the first eligibility which a primary key field needs, right? Having unique data, right? That is the first one, unique data. So unique data means no duplication. Second one, that is important. Look, so assume that this person, Vimal, doesn't have this admission number, right? So in some cases, so in some instances, it is possible, right? So in this instance, we have a student called Vimal, but he doesn't have any admission number. So now we have a problem because according to the definition, primary key must identify every record, right? A field which identifies every record in a table can be called primary key, right? So now look here. If you mention that admission number is a primary key, suppose if you think that the admission number is the eligible candidate for the primary key, there is an issue because look here, the first record can be identified by 1001. Am I correct? So when I call 1001, I know that Kamal stands up, right? So I can identify that. Even when I call 1003, right? So I know that Meena stands up. So in this instance also, it is easy to identify. But look here, how did you identify Vimal? So you want to identify Vimal, which means my second record. I'm often, switching from real world example and this one, right? Then only you can understand. So try understanding, right? I am using those, practical scenarios too, right? So that's why I'm using such phrases like standing up or something, right? So here, so when I use Vimal or when I want to identify Vimal, it can't because Vimal doesn't have any admission number. So tell me how it's possible. The other students were identified, right? Because they have admission numbers, but this man doesn't have. So in this instance, I'm unable to identify the second record, which means I'm unable to identify women, right? But we already discussed that primary key fields must identify each record. So now, can you say that admission number identify each record? No, right? So then it is not the primary key. So what is important? This is my second requirement for a primary key. The primary key field cannot have empty data, right? So it should have data. You cannot keep that as blank. So we use a special name there, null, right? Null means empty. So it cannot have empty data. So which means not null. Have you understood? Not null means it cannot be empty. There should be a data inside. This is wrong. So those fields who satisfy these two requirements can become as primary key or can become as the eligible candidates for the primary key, right? So here, the first rule is having unique data, no duplication. Second one, it cannot have any null value, which means it cannot be empty. Clear? So this is the primary key. I don't want to explain any other things, but hope I have taken enough time to explain them or maybe recall them. So everyone should understand. Okay, so this is the primary key. So let's take the foreign key now. Sorry, not foreign key. I tried to take the composite key now. After explaining the composite key, I take foreign key. So let's take the composite key. Look, so okay, have a look at the example first, right? With the help of that particular example, I try to explain that concept, composite key or composite primary key. Right? We have another table which has students' admission number, right? A subject number and students' marks, right? So you have three fields. The first field admission number, second subject number, and third marks. Okay. So there is an admission number. Let me take 1001 again. Subject number, there is a number given for a subject, and this is the marks which 1001 obtained, right? So we have another student, another subject number, right? Marks. Right, look. Right. So this is the table for storing students' marks, right? So that's why we have inserted admission numbers, subject numbers, and marks, right? Look. So now there may be many records. I have taken 4 records for explaining, for demonstration purpose. I have taken 4 records, but this may have hundreds of records, right? Have a look at this. For identifying each record, we need a field. So we need a primary key because we want to identify every field. So every record, right? Look. For identifying every record, primary key must be selected. Note that primary key must fulfill those 2 requirements. It must have unique data and also it cannot be empty. As you can see, no records have empty data. So there is no issue at all, right? But you need to check whether these fields have unique data. Look here. Okay, let's check whether this admission number has the eligibility for becoming as primary key. Look here, admission number 1001 repeated, which is duplication. Because one student sat for 2 subjects. 1001, we don't know who is it, but 1001 sat for 80, that is also subject, one of the subjects, and obtained 75 marks. The same student sat for 82, which means another subject, and also obtained 95. So in this instance, admission number repeated, so admission number cannot become as primary key. Have a look at the subject number. So here, subject number is duplicated. Look here, 80 repeated. So we have 80 twice because for one subject, there may be many students. See, here, this 1001 set for 80. Here, 1003, which is another student, right? Set for the same subject. So you cannot say that subject number is the primary key because it has duplication. So let's go to the marks. As we all know, marks never be a primary key because there are many students who have same marks. But fortunately, we have a unique data here. But again, I tell you, having unique data doesn't mean that the entire table has unique data. Right? Here you have only sample data, maybe 4 data. But there may be hundreds of data, definitely marks repeated, right? So in this table, none of the fields have the eligibility, right? You can't select any field for primary key. So what's the idea? Now, because we want to identify records, right? So if you are unable to identify any unique field, you cannot skip and you can't say that there is no way to identify each record because it is always good to identify each record. See, when it comes to student, sometimes if you don't have any unique feature, we can't say that we are unable to identify you. We need to identify you in some using some different mechanisms or different technologies. Because identifying a student is very, very important for us. Similarly, here no fields have the eligibility for becoming as primary key. So even though there is no field, you should try in a different way. Okay, look, now, since no single field has the eligibility, we need to compose or we need to join more than 2 fields, sorry, more than 1 field to get uniqueness. I repeat it. I checked every field one by one, and also I decided that no fields have unique data. So now I need to combine more than 1 fields, which means 2 fields first together and check for the uniqueness. If 2 fields together have uniqueness, then it simply means those 2 fields as a combination, they can identify each record. Okay, have a look at this. Now, let's combine admission number and subject number together. Right? let's join both these fields and check whether the combination of these two fields has the eligibility, right? So we have to check that. Look here. So when they are combined, your first data looks like this. This is your first data. I take some time, listen to me carefully, right? So I combine these two data. Now my first data looks like 1180. Now I must check whether that 1180 is duplicated or is repeated. I need to check that. I have to use my knowledge, right, to check whether it is possible for having that one again. If it is not, if you find that it is not repeated, then definitely you can say that these two fields can be combined as one and identify every record. Look here. So will it be repeated 1180? Will it be repeated? Will you have the same data again? Is it possible? How to check? Now look at the first record. What's the meaning of the first record? The first record tells us that this student 1001 obtained 75 marks for the subject 80. Repeat, 1001 obtained marks 75 for subject 80. That's the meaning of first record. Now, if you think that 1180 is repeated, sometimes you may have that idea. You may think that 1180 repeated. So if you think so, here in the marks column or in the marks field, right, definitely you need to enter the same marks. Because what we are doing is we are entering the marks and the subjects and the students. So now, according to these two data, or if you take these two data, it means 1001 set for 80, right? So when he set for 80, definitely he has to take the same marks because we are storing the subject marks and student marks. You can't say that it is the first term mark or it is second term. That is not possible. We cannot store different exams in one table. So this may be one exam, maybe a term exam or maybe a common exam. So if it is 80, that is one subject, right? So that student never sit for the same exam again, right? So here, now I can confirm that these two data never be repeated, right? So if it is not repeated, even the others are also not repeated, right? 1081 never be repeated. 1182 never be repeated. 1380 never be repeated. So now these two fields, both admission number, subject number, as a combination, they can identify each record because they have uniqueness. Now the first record can be identified by these two data, right? Second record can be identified by these two data, 1000 to 81. Similarly, the other records identified. So I come to the point now. What is composite key? If two or more than two fields, I repeat it, if two fields or more than two fields are able to identify each record, right? Are able to identify each record, then that is composite key. Composite key, primary key, almost similar. But primary key always, denoted one single field, right? So primary key is always one field. But when it comes to composite, minimum two fields, right? Sometimes more than two fields is also possible, but minimum two fields. So in this instance, here composite key, admission number, which means ADNO plus SUVNO. So when it is composite key, try writing like this, right? So I'm writing the composite key here, ADNO plus SUVNO. This may be the better way to write the composite primary key because we are combining both of them. So that plus may show the combination, right? Even this is also possible. You can write ADNO, comma SUVNO. Okay. So in here, I'm in the same example, so I don't want to write the table name, but in exams, you have to write the table name like this: student marks table, right? Admission number, subject number. Again, student marks, admission. Both ways are possible, right? Both ways are accepted in exams. Okay. So this is composite primary key. So we go for composite key when we are unable to identify any primary key. If a table has a primary key, then there is no need for having or finding the composite key, right? Have you understood? So, but if you are unable to identify a primary key, which means if the table doesn't have any field with unique data, then you have to go for composite key. Okay, so these are the two keys: composite key, primary key, almost same except single and combination. Okay. Any doubt? If you want to ask any doubt, ask me. Have you understood the things clearly? If you have any doubt, you can ask. Because I'm going to take the foreign key now. No doubts at all, right? So it's good, right? So let's take the third key, which is foreign key. Foreign key, right? So as okay, let's define the term foreign key first. After that, I take the example and explain some other things, right? That may be the best way to recall, right? So foreign key is something different than the primary key and composite key, because when it comes to primary key and composite key, we set them or we identify them in a single table. So both these keys, both primary key and composite key, are related with or are related to single table. But when it comes to when it comes to foreign, there is a possibility for having two tables, right? That is important, right? Let's define that first. A field in, or if a field in one table, right, is set as primary key in another table, then it is called foreign key. I repeat it. If a field in one table is set as primary key in another table, then it is called a foreign key. Okay, have a look at the example. So I take this example. So here we have student table, right? So this has again admission number, names, and okay, A. We have three fields. And also I have another table which is payment. Right? I have a table for having or for storing payment details. So there I have three fields again. The first field is receipt number. Receipt number. Then the second field will be amount. The third field would be this one, admission number. Okay, look carefully. So I have two tables. The first table for having students' data. The second table for having payment data. So in student table, you have admission number, names, age. So we have 3 fields there. Even in the second table also, we have 3 fields, but they are different fields. So receipt number is there because it's all about payment. So, when a payment is made, receipt has to be given. So that receipt number is there, the amount, and also the admission number, right? Same, right? Look, let's add some data there. Right, so we have 3 records in the first table, so that has students data. So let's take the payment table. So here I have a receipt number, an amount. So this is made by 1001, right? He has paid that. 002, another receipt number. There is an amount, and also this has been paid by 1002. 003. This has been paid by 1004. 004, right? 1000 rupees. This has been paid by 1001. Okay, enough. Look here. So how did I define the term foreign key? If a field in one table is set as primary key in another table, then it's foreign key. Okay, look. So if I take the student table, right? Have a look at the student table. So in student table, we can set the admission number as the primary key. So we already discussed, right? So the remaining fields cannot have the eligibility, names cannot have, and also age cannot be set as primary key because age has duplications, right? So in this instance, it is admission number. So assume that admission number is set as primary key. Listen to me. Generally, primary key field can be underlined, right? If a field has an underline, it means it is the primary key, right? So this is the primary key here. So have a look at the second table, payment table. You have receipt number, amount, admission number, right? You have 3 fields. But here, look at that admission number. So this is the one which I talked about earlier. So you can't say that admission number is unique or admission number is primary key in all the possible instances, right? It depends on the circumstances, or it depends on the table which has fields. So in some instances, admission number can be primary key, but in some instances, it is not possible. So actually, it depends on the other fields, right? So here, you can't say that the admission number is the primary key. Why? Okay, admission number is duplicated, right? It has duplication, right? It has duplication, right? You have data, 1001 twice. So you cannot take that ADNO as primary key, right? So what is the primary key here? Check that receipt number. So for every receipt, there is a number issued, right? Number given. That number cannot be repeated. Imagine, right? So if you you pay, you make some payments in school, right? Facilities fees and some other fees. Check that receipt number. So when a number is printed on one receipt, that number cannot be printed on any other receipt. If 2 receipts have the same number, definitely there is a complex for doing accounting works. So definitely each and every receipt should have a unique number. So now I can say that receipt number is the primary key, right? So here it is the primary key. So now, take your definition for the foreign key again. If a field is set as primary key in one table, but not in another table, then it is foreign key. Look here. Take a look at this admission number. This field is the primary key in one table. So where is this field? It is in student table. In student table, this is primary key. But the same admission number, same ADNO is not the primary key in payment table. So it is the primary key in one table, but not in another table. So here it is not the primary key because receipt number is the primary key. So in payment table, this ADNO is called foreign key because that is the primary key of another table, but not the primary key in this table because receipt number has already been set. So here, this can be called foreign key, right? This is foreign key. Have you got the point? So if you are trying to point one field as foreign key, make sure that field should be the primary key in another table. That is important. Have you got my point, right? So now, if I think that ADNO in this table is foreign key, definitely I have to check whether it is the primary key in another table. So I checked the student table and I found that it is a primary key there. So now I realized that it is the foreign key here. Got the point? So you cannot say or you cannot expect unique data in foreign key. In primary key, there should be unique data, but here in foreign key, data duplication can be possible, right? As you can see, data duplicated. Okay, so why foreign key? We already discussed about primary key. So we know primary key is for identifying each record. If the question is the reason for setting the primary key or why primary key, the answer would be identifying every record. Similarly, if it is why foreign key, so if someone asks you to give the reason for declaring the foreign key, definitely you must have the ability to give the answer, right? So why foreign key? I will explain. Look here, this admission number, listen to me carefully, right? This admission number is one of the features or one of the characteristics of students. If I'm a student, definitely that admission number is one of my features, right? So this admission number must be in student table because we need to add the fields in appropriate tables. So since ADNO is related to student, that must be added to student table. Okay, that is there, right? So it is there. Okay, that's okay. But in addition to that ADNO, you added the same field here because ADNO is only for student. So definitely the right place for having admission number is student table. That may be the right table. But yes, you have that ADNO in the student table. There is no, argument. But at the same time, you added that ADNO in payment table. Think, why did you add that? It is too easy. If you want to join two tables together, right? For joining two tables, so for connecting two tables together, you need a fundamental, rule, which is having a common field. If you want to join these two tables together, definitely there is a common field needed. So that's the reason why I have added this ADNO here. But this is the original place, right? This is the place where we need ADNO. But I added here additionally because I needed to join these two tables. I tell you the reason later, right? I needed to join these two tables. So I need a common field. So that may be the reason why this field is added here. So why foreign key? It's too simple for joining two tables. Don't forget, with the help of the foreign key, we can join two tables. Right? Always the foreign key of one table and the primary key of another table are connected together for joining joining two tables. I repeat it. You need a foreign key in one table and primary key in another table for joining two tables. Right? So why foreign key? It is for joining two tables. Clear? So these are the three keys: primary key, foreign key, and composite primary key. right? So I take those definitions again. What is primary key? A field which is identified every record in a table. What are the eligibilities which a primary key field needs? Having unique data and also not null, which means not empty, right? What is composite key? If two or more than two fields identify each record uniquely, then it is composite key, right? So we go for composite key because when we don't have any primary key fields, then only we can go for composite key, right? Why do you use composite key? The reason is same as primary key. We identify the primary key, or we select the primary key in order to identify each record. We identify the composite key for the similar reason. So composite key also for identifying each record. Okay. So what is foreign key? If a field is set as primary key in one table, but not set as primary key in another table, then it is foreign key. So why foreign key? It is for connecting two tables together, right? So you can't expect any special characteristics from foreign key, right? Okay. These are the three keys. Then right, look. So hereafter we have to take the next part. That may be another important part. This may be the last thing to be discussed in database. Relationship, right? Relationships. Look, this is another important one. This may be the advanced concept here in database. So let me define the term relationship first. It may be very simple, often asked in MCQ, right? So many times, right? Not one, not twice. So it was asked many times in MCQ, right? So they expect you to know about the basic idea behind relationship, right? So what is relationship here in database? Connection of two tables, association between two tables, right? So relationship in database is nothing. It's a connection. It's an association between two tables. Don't forget that one. So in MCQ, they often check your knowledge on relationship. They may give some different answers like association between two fields, right? Connection between two fields never be relationship. So they ask whether the connection between two records, right? No, right? There is nothing related to relationship. You can't say the association between two records is relationship. That is wrong. They may ask whether the connection between two databases is relationship. No, right? That is not the relationship. So what exactly the term is? Association between two tables. So as you can see, earlier we had two tables, right? Student table and payment table. So when you have two tables, there may be a connection, or there may be an association, or there may be a link between those two tables. That link or that connection or that association can be called relationship, right? Okay, I will explain. But before that, there can be three types of relationships, right? There can be three different types of relationships between tables. Okay, let me name them first. So first type is called one-to-one relationship. One-to-one relationship. This may be the first type. I will explain. Then we have one-to-many relationship. Okay, one-to-many relationship. That is another one. And also we have many-to-many relationship. Many-to-many relationship. Okay, so what is, right? What is relationship? the connection between two tables. So the connection between two tables can be sometimes one-to-one, sometimes one-to-many, and also sometimes many-to-many. So we need to identify, or we need to understand these three relationships with the help of some examples. As I always say, examples are very important to understand the concept. Even I can simply explain these three types in verbal, right? Without the help, without any examples, I can directly explain them. But if I explain like that, you cannot understand the whole concept clearly. So that's why we need some examples for identifying or understanding everything clearly. So if you understand something with the examples, you never forget them. That may be the biggest advantages that you get when you have examples. Okay, right. So hereafter, I have to explain each and every relationship one by one. But again, I'm not going to explain today because it takes some time. And also, it would be better to take them as a sequence, right? One by one, we have to take three things continuously. Then only you can understand. You can easily compare the things and understand, right? So that's why I don't want to take the one-to-one today. Even though we have some time, I don't want to take that because I need a sequence there. It must be explained as a sequence. Then only you can understand, right? So that may be taught in the next class. Okay, so it's enough for today. We will discuss the other things in next class. Okay, thank you.